So colour theory, we were just having a little bit of a chat beforehand. Obviously, there's some theoretical thoughts and ideas behind colour. We are all looking at colour every day. Colour is really important to our worlds. It's important to us as human beings, but it's also important to us as artists and designers. And we were just talking and saying, to be quite honest, a lot of people might just think about colour theory and don't actually use it. It's very intuitive. Colour's very intuitive to use, and it's important that we have freedom with colour. But obviously with scientists historically and artists, they've looked at colour theory in more depth. I think also colour theory gives us an understanding of how we look at different pieces of art and how we can decipher the art that we're seeing and put some sort of realms and ideas behind it. If anybody doesn't know me, I'm head of the course here on the Fashion Foundation. And I've been with OCAD for a while, but also I'm a fashion and textile practitioner. And colour is completely important to me because obviously commercial colour, people want to buy colour combinations in print, knit and weave, and also selecting colour for retail is hugely important. And today we're going to cover a very brief history of colour theory, some key colour theories, not every single one. If you go on, there's a lot of information on the internet about colour. Some of it's different, some of it's, interesting. Some of the dates are wrong, I noticed, but we're going to look at hue, saturation, harmony and temperature, what's monochromatic and other theoretical ideas, uses in art and design, and the language of colour. I haven't done it for every single sort of art discipline, but there's a few examples across the areas that you can have a look at.
Sorry to interrupt, Jo. I can't see your PowerPoint. Can the other people see it?
Okay, all right.
I can't see it either. I'm just literally trying to flick through all the settings on my phone and I can't see it.
You can't.
There it is.
There it is. We've got it here now. So we've talked about the introduction and we're just about to look at where did it all start. So the idea of colour is not a new one. I mean, you think going back to the Egyptians, how they used colour, how gold was so important in their society. And primary colours, it's always been surrounding, it's always had a language. But some key scientists, one being Sir Isaac Newton, in the 1660s was experimenting with, if anybody's done physics will have probably covered some of this area, with the idea of prisms and capturing sunlight and looking at rainbows and using the rainbow to inform the first colour wheel. You can see it in the top right hand corner. He was using white light to discover refracted light and to see colours. And he thought that white light created the colours, but we've since learned really that if you put all the colours together, it actually forms black. So it was a little bit different, but obviously his work was published and it was very key and kicked off this idea of a colour wheel of 7 colours. Then we had Goethe, Johann Wolfgang Goethe, who looked at the theory. He started off in sort of, and there's 2 conflicting, that should say 1709, about the colours and also looking at the physiological aspects of colour on human beings and how it affects the human emotion. Which is really important, and yes, the scientific ideas with that behind that as well. If you look at these two circles, and if you look at the one on the left, the yellow one with the black circle, and you stare at the black dot for 15 seconds, I'm going to count in my head. Just stare at that dot And then when you've stopped, the 15 seconds is over, look at the one on the single dot on the right. So if you start now, and I'll do a countdown I'll count in my head 15 seconds. So have a look at the yellow circle and I'll do the same. Now look at the one on the right. What colour do you see?
Blue.
Anybody else?
I see a purpley kind of colour.
Yeah, violet blue. First time I did it, I saw blue. The second time I saw it, sort of kind of violet colour. And this opens up a whole other area of colours that we don't see and how optics affect the way we see colour. And it's just quite a fun thing to do, really, to see what you can see with colour. William Turner also looked at colour. He looked at primary colours in light and how it could be represented in dimensions. So artists were looking back all the time through history of what colour means to them and how they can use it. Johannes Itten put the 12 colour part circle together. He was part of the Bauhaus teaching cohort and an artist in Weimar, Germany. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Bauhaus school and how innovative it was in the 1920s, and all the design and art theories affected modern art going forward. I know the retailer COS bases their collection on Bauhaus, and that is their edit point. Maybe I shouldn't share that with anybody, but that's their edit point for their collection is Bauhaus. Very sort of strict lines, geometry, mathematics, colour. Limited colour is really interesting. And he identified 7 values and 12 tones within his star format. And they're beautiful pieces of art in their own right, looking at tones and things. And when you relate it back to his work on the right-hand side, you can see how it really relates to his idea and art theory, how he uses the colour theories in his art and his abstract expressionism. So Itten linked colour with emotion as well, and the impact of colour on our mood. He divided the colour into seasons, which, having read up a little bit about him, he looked at warm and cool colours and how they affected our seasons. I mean, this was divided into 4, and it was a huge influence in the 1920s, fashion, textiles, beauty industry, design in general, of how colour affects our mood. And on the left-hand side, you can see another way of looking at it. The triangle in the centre shows you primary colours. If you mix two primary colours together, you get secondary colours, and therefore, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more going forward. Joseph Itten's worked on colour play, and another little bit of sort of looking at colour. There's quite a lot of colour squares here. And in the top back, sort of middle area, number 58, you've got some yellow squares. And if you look at them and you look at the white yellow and the black yellow, you can see that one of them looks bigger than the other. And it's an optical illusion. And the one on the white is supposedly the bigger one. Do you agree with that? Or is it marginal? And the red squares underneath of equal size look smaller on black. So they're saying if you choose a black background, things shrink. If you choose a white ground, things pop. In figure 60 to 71, it shows different combinations of how you use the same colour on different backgrounds and how the colour changes when they're very close together or they're very contrasty. Some of them are quite jarring and become very much, sort of very optical illusions and very sort of 60s psychedelic kind of ideas. And how colour changes. And this is really important of how you use colour, because when you're limited in a print situation, whether it's graphics or textiles or something that's printed, using colour play and backgrounds to change colour, you could be restricted just to use 6 colours because of cost, and it gives you the facility to use another colour because of the way it's been laid on top of other colours. Joseph Albers was also part of the Bauhaus school and married to textile designer Annie Albers, but one of his key theories was similar. It was about colour relation and how you can change colour through what the colour you lay it on top of. And he uses, I picked this example of the orange with the brown. The brown is the same colour, but if you look at the blue of the brown on the blue, it looks completely different. And it's just the relationship between colours and backgrounds and colour deception. It's an optical illusion, and there was a guy called Belzold who did an effect probably about a century earlier, who used this optical illusion with colour. I just put in an Annie Albers for anybody who was interested in textiles to show her sort of groundbreaking 1920s Bauhaus-inspired textiles, which use, you know, her husband's colour theory, and I'm sure they work very closely together to play with colour, to play with geometric shapes and the relationship of colour. So Joseph Albers, famous for his abstract series, Homage to the Square. So he spent a lot of his career playing with colour. I mean, I think that's so beautiful, looking at these colour plays. And it's experiments that you could do as an artist or a designer, is play with colour. When I first started university, my first term was it was called colour. And all we did was play with colour. We painted colour, we painted still lives in different colour, using colour theories to experiment. We made clothes, we wove, we printed, all different colour theories. And we spent the whole of the first term doing this. And we used Albers and Itten's theories to generate colour palettes and to generate different ideas. And if you sort of got this in the back of your mind all the time, and you think about the mood you want to create, or the relationship of colour, and the idea of not using black outlines ever, and how the borders of colour relate together, is a really interesting concept. And, you know, it could be theatre design, it could be interior design. There's all sorts of, that box has lots of different uses. Sciarra also used colour as scientific tests to see if people had colour blindness, excuse me, and all the different colours, and seeing different opticals inside to hide colours, which is quite an interesting effect. Again, no use of black. Excuse me, I'll just take a drink. Can you see the numbers in there? Can you see the numbers in there? Anybody should read 5, 42 and 6. If you can't, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Everybody sees colour differently. Now, we're talking about a little bit of colour and some of the sort of technical language. Hue is really a description of the colour, blue, green, red, etc. It's the family of colours, because when you say red, you might think of, in your head, very different reds from somebody else, but it's the colour family, the description of that colour. Saturation or chroma is the intensity, how sharp or dull it is, usually either mixed with white or mixed with black. And value is how light or dark it is. Again, you can see that, you know, as it moves into looking at on-screen values or editing photographs, you might be very used to using intensity, saturation, value, how light and dark it is with a photograph. And it really gives the birth of filters in our minds. So, you know, how you can change the mood with the amount of colour that you use. Again, in art, high and low saturation intense colour on the left-hand side from Claude Monet and Vincent van Gogh, and sort of muted soft tones from Degas and Singer Sargent. So we're looking at the colour wheel now. So primary colours on the left are obviously colours that should not be able to be made by mixing colours together. They are pure, crisp colours. So that's red, yellow and blue. But then also looking at basic colours. You can see the red, yellow and blue on there, but you can see secondary colours which are mixed together and tertiary colours which are mixing two secondary colours together. Here's some examples of primary tones. You've got Mondrian, which is something I think everybody learns at primary school or even earlier, looking at blocks of colour. Again, interesting, it's been divided up by black. It's white, yellow and blue, and the relationship is separated. You've got much more of a blended feeling, but still the primary tones of red, yellow and blue from Mark Rothko. And, you know, colours that are used within the fashion industry and fine art. Some beautiful ideas from classical artists who probably had no concept of colour theory, but were using colour to highlight different areas of their paintings within their ideas, looking at the Jan van Meer painting with the yellow bodice, the blue skirt and the red of the jug to formulate a primary colour palette. I'm sorry if that's a little bit hidden. Let's see if I can move her out of the way. And it leads the eye in and gives focus. Secondary colours, as we talked about, these are colours made by mixing equal parts of primary colours together and you get secondary colours. So obviously you're going to be mixing yellow and blue together to make green. You're going to be using yellow and red together to make orange and using blue and red to make magenta. And some art that has used secondary colour harmonies, which quite interestingly to show both landscape and a portrait of a tiger, which is a rather lovely idea. And, you know, they've taken away the primary jarring pure colour and use softer tones of secondary colour harmonies. Tertiary colours. Colours made by mixing equal parts of primary colour and a secondary colour. The 6 tertiary colours: amber, vermilion, magenta, turquoise, teal. And this green, a lot of theorists call it chartreuse or spring green. So that's open to the jury of what you'd like to. I think it's probably, I mean, it reminds me of spring onions a little bit. So I'm going to call it spring green. But these are the 6 tertiary colours. So they're getting softer all the time. You can see them buffed up against the primary colours. They're much softer. There's some descriptions of colours there. So tertiary harmony colours used in art. This is a beautiful painting using the colours. So they have got a softer tone. And if you were to build the pictures of the artworks next to each other, you'd see it getting softer and softer. You can see the sort of mood that you get from the pure colours against the skin, and how soft the landscapes can start to appear. Triadic. Now this is 3 colours equally spaced on the colour wheel. So if you were to twist this little dial, it would be sort of the 3 colours opposite. So if it was going towards the orange, it would go to the next space. So it would be orange, this sort of darker red, and this sort of more sky blue looking idea. So that would be a triadic colour palette, and that would be a second one. And then on the right-hand side, it gives you some sort of indications of more sort of diverse kinds of colour palettes that you could get out of it. And the whole point of these is these colours have a relationship together. They link together. They should work in the real world together. And it does form a different mood of how you put colours together. Here's some triadic examples. I thought the Marilyn Monroe was particularly significant about, the use of colour, and also Van Gogh, and how he used quite a limited colour palette, but obviously there's sort of some tones and highlights within there, but the basic triadic colour palette is very clear. Androgynous. I've called it the easiest colour palette. It's colours that are adjacent. They sit next to each other. They're very harmonious. They support each other. I think if you were getting dressed in the morning and you like colour, it's quite easy to dress within this format, because it gives you a colour palette that sort of builds on shades and tones. So again, some really nice examples on the right hand side of different ranges. Mixing a colour palette, you talk about having maybe 3 base colours and then a couple of accent colours. And that would work probably here. You might think which of the strongest colours that you're going to use might be the 3 in the centre and the 2 accents either side. Some of them are very blended and tonal. And again, you can see that this is Joseph Albers that we were talking about earlier, and one of his ideas with the square. I like the idea of homage to the square. Soft spoken, I thought was really good. And this beautiful Degas painting with the shades of orange. I don't think a room ever looks like that with, even if you've got a family of people with orange hair, the tonal oranges that are there. And then the beautiful blues from Monet. Exquisite choices of colour that are very harmonious, and clothing. I mean, I feel quite insulting to these beautiful artists to put clothing next to them, but I think it's good, that we think about the real world. Analogous colours, again, harmonious colours used within art. A bit of a feast for the eyes with Degas and Steinitz. And then we're going back to Itten's. What Itten's talked about is colour temperature, warm and cool. So we're saying that the warmer tones are the reds, oranges and yellows, and the cooler tones are the greens, blues and violets. And that could be subdivided into seasons. So warm examples here, we've got Paul Klee, who was also part of the Bauhaus group, and Rothko, a personal favourite of mine, just that sort of interpreting skylines and horizons into colour, and using different shades of colour. And Andy Warhol again, looking at warm colours mixing together. And cool examples, these are very, very cool. I thought the Whistler one was particularly beautiful. They make you feel a little sad and melancholic, I think. Picasso, and this beautiful one, A Very Soft Still Life. Oops, sorry. So, complementary colours. These are opposite colours on the colour wheel. So you've got yellow and purple. Green and red is a very classic one. Orange and blue. So if you look on the left side here, the red and green is very sort of idea. You've got the colour and the complementary colour because it's opposite. And it's showing you all the different combinations. And then some examples of palettes that are opposites as well in the colour positioning. And how these colours, complementary colours, have been used in art. Matisse was a great colorist. He's known for his colors. He was part of the Wild Beasts group, the Fauves, along with Derain, who experimented with color and the complementary color theory by not representing what they saw, but they wanted to make colors brighter, bolder, and non-naturalistic, often using colors straight from the tube to express emotions. And, this was groundbreaking at the time. You think about classical art and it was very representative of the real world. What you saw, very sort of intimate, or, a tree was green, the grass was green, the sky was blue. skin was skin coloured. And, you know, this is starting to think out the box. You know, this guy's moustache is green, his hair's green, and all the shades. I mean, not many people have blue on their faces to denote shadow. So it's using different colour balances within, mixing different ideas and using colours as they truly are out the tube. Split complementary. This is a little bit more complex. So what you're doing here is you're using two colours that are close together with the opposite complementary colour. So you're looking at different ideas, and that would spin around the colour wheel as well. So you might use the violet and the blue with the soft orange. So it's a different way of looking at ideas and how to use colour. These were a couple of examples. A very interesting sort of 70s looking promotional album, but this idea of a tone of red used with orange and blue, or a much sort of softer idea, using the soft blues with the orange and yellow. Tint shades and tones. A tint is where a colour, you add white to it and it becomes a lighter version of itself. So you get all the ranges of pinks and shell pinks through. A shade is where an artist adds black to darken it down, so it gets sort of deeper in its shade. And tone is where an artist adds grey, so it becomes more muted. Monochromatic is using a range. I think most people will be familiar with this, a range of the same shade of colour. So we traditionally talk about it being used with grey, and that's important that you just get those tones of grey. They could be warm greys, they could be cool greys, all mixed together. And an example of Paul Cézanne apples of tonal shades used together. And then we're looking at colour emotion. If anybody's watching that is interested in perhaps how colour emotion is used in the world, traditionally we're brought up with what colours mean to us. I think we're educated from a young age what colours mean to us. Red, passion, love, anger. Orange, vitality. I think purple's interesting when it talks about creativity, royalty and wealth. And this was a colour, because the Pope wears purple, it's very regal, it's very elevated. Brown, wholesome. I think brown bread and dependability and traditional and wood. And you've got things like white, which might be sort of very clean, pure kind of idea. But you can also look at different meanings within the world and how we use it within graphic design or different areas, and what colours businesses and companies have used for their logos, which is important. And, you know, it's quite interesting the colours that they use to signify what their brand means, whether you use white. It's quite interesting. Apple used a white or silver apple, not a green apple, whereas gas companies and petrol companies seem to use green, thinking of health and growth, which is a bit odd when you think about it. You know, you think about McDonald's using red, bold, youthful. So it's a really interesting concept of how we use and pick colours to either energize or evoke an emotion within our work. So power of red, I mean, probably the most significant colour, one of the strongest colours. Sorry, going backwards now. Definitely used in advertising, very eye-catching. You know, we're used to traffic lights. Red, amber, green. Red is stop, don't move. You know, it catches your attention, and it can be used to great effect in advertising. And different colours that could be used for different ideas. The purple for creativity. The yellow or gold keeps design simple and straightforward. The orange for energy. So different businesses could use colour in a different way. I thought this sort of using brown and natural for a sort of barber kind of idea, very traditional and creative in that way. But also using green as an energize for, almost looks like older people there. So it's quite interesting use of that. This is just a page to sort of capture what we've been talking about, the different ideas and the different places, so that you could just take this away, put it in your sketchbook, have something there to refer to play with colour and the different positioning of colour, complementary, triadic, split complementary, analogious, and then two others which we didn't cover today, but I thought there was just too many at the moment. But you've got the tetradic, triangle and square, but it could give you options to try, because you might try in your sketchbook a small sketch and try some different combinations of that sketch in different colours to see what that works, or whether you actually want to use it digitally. And then obviously there are other colour wheels and other colour theories. Printed, RGB and CMYK are important for the digital web media. The idea is that it's an ultimate goal for printing, and these are the colours that you could use. Red, green, blue is used for digital and web media, and cyan, magenta, yellow and black is used for printing, because these are the inks that are available and the combinations of printing inks that could be used to print a poster or print fabric, and they are the combinations. And those working in the digital world or working on with colour palettes will be more familiar with these different colour formats. It doesn't stop you as an artist thinking about colour and thinking about the traditional colour wheels, but it does make a difference to, if you were giving instructions to something to be printed, you would specify your colour. I've did some previous talks about sort of colour theory within trend as well. So that might be something that you have a look at if you're interested in colour. And to end, I've just put a couple of conclusion quotes from different artists that are quite interesting. It says here, why do two colours put one next to the other sing? Can one really explain this? Pablo Picasso says no, just as one can never learn how to paint. Okay. And I like the Paul Gauguin. If you see a tree as blue, then make it blue. See the world how you want to see it. Marc Chagall, all colours are friends of their neighbours and the lovers of their opposites. And Joseph Albers, who's been a main contributor to this talk, also says, if one says red, the name of a colour, there are 50 people listening. It can be expected that there will be 50 reds in their minds, and one can be sure that all these reds will be different. Going back to a hue, there could be 50 different hues of red, but they're all in the family of red. And that's quite interesting, how many reds are out there and how many reds that you can make. So it's a personal choice. So I hope this talk has given you some ideas of how to use colour, how other artists have used colour that you could use in your research, but given you some specifics about the names of colour theory and how to use them. I'll stop sharing now. Still got the recording on. Has anybody got any questions about this and how they are interested in colour going forward? Or if you've got something from the presentation, it would be great to hear what you think. Did it sort of good to recap on some of the basic colour theories that you might have known about or been taught before?
I found it really useful, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the main thing. It's, sometimes a recap, sometimes something when you're looking at a painting, whether it be in an art gallery or online or in a book, makes you think, oh, that's a specific type of color combination. I could use that in my own work. And that's the point of it. Any other questions before we leave? We're pretty well on time. So it's great to have you here. And if there's any questions or follow-ups you'd like to do, and for those watching, if they have any questions coming forward, it would be great that you could, ask the questions, and we can continue to talk about the conversation of colour, because it is so important. Thanks, Ellie. Really good. I really appreciate that. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'll close the meeting, and I look forward to seeing some of your work and use of colour going forward. Bye for now. Bye.